5, 6, 7, even 8% interest right now on lending stablecoins. And no, I'm not talking about hey,
What's up?
I'm not talking about BitConnect. I am not talking about Carlos Matos. I am talking about compound finance. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Crypto Bobby. Hope you are having a great day, great night, wherever you're watching or listening in from. And today, let's talk about a relatively new piece of technology built on Ethereum that is, I think, pretty awesome and also pretty interesting when it comes to potentially making some spare cash, some spare money in this bear market. A lot of you guys always reach out, and a lot of the common complaints I get about just my channel in particular is, how do I make money, Rob? How do I make money, Rob? How do I make money, Rob? Well, what about potentially making 8% APR on a DAI, which is a stablecoin that you are lending to somebody else? Well, let's talk about all that and more, the positives, the negatives, the potential risks as well, and we'll get into it. So I'll hop into my computer right now. Let's go. So what is compound finance? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about exactly how I'm using this, how I am earning interest right now on this. And again, the pluses, the minuses, the potential risk factors involved with using something like this as we move forward. A quick note about this video. This is not sponsored. I know half you guys are the most skeptical people on earth. This is not sponsored. I have no relation whatsoever to compound finance. I am actually utilizing this tool myself. There is no referral link. There is no nothing. So before you all freak the hell out, just keep that in mind. But so what exactly is compound finance? So compound finance, or compound as they call it, is an open source protocol for algorithmic efficient money markets on the Ethereum blockchain. So this is right now built on Ethereum with Ethereum. And at a very high level, there's two main things that you can do with compound finance. You can, number one, you can supply assets to the platform, and you can borrow assets from the platform as well. So what does that mean? If you supply assets to the compound protocol, you are able to supply those. So right now, the assets you can supply are basic attention token, DAI, which is a stablecoin, which is what we'll use in this use case. You can supply REP, which is Augur's token. You can supply WETH, which is the wrap version of Ethereum. And you can supply the 0x token, which is the token utilized for the 0x protocol. The interesting thing about these, as we will see in a minute, is that these are fully liquid tokens. So once you supply them, you are supplying them to the general protocol, not to a specific user. Another aspect of Compound is that, as we'll see, it is completely transparent. It's done on the Ethereum protocol, or it's done on the Ethereum blockchain. They have their own protocol for it, and you can see the real-time statistics, the level of collateralization, so you can try to avoid credit risk as best as possible. And on the other end of the spectrum, you can borrow assets. So if you are trying to short an asset, or you are trying to essentially take out a loan, maybe it's with DAI, you want to take out more DAI than you have in or take out more Ethereum and borrow Ethereum to participate in an investment or whatever it might be. You think the market is going to go up significantly, whatever it might be. You can also borrow assets transparently in real time and repay when you need to. So pretty interesting off the top. And when I'm looking at this, I'll begin and I'll click on the app so you guys can check this out. And right now I actually have a supply. So I've already supplied about $5,000. I can also switch this over to ETH. So about 54 ETH worth. But about $5,000 I have in my account right now, and it's solely supplied to DAI, and then I have in wrapped ETH as well. And if I click on this with DAI, you can see here that my current supply, so I've supplied $5,400 worth of DAI to the Compound protocol. I actually did that about 3 hours ago. And one of the cooler parts about the Compound as a whole is that it pays interest on a block per block basis, essentially. So while I did this afternoon, I've made a whole 27 cents so far. And you can see the interest rate is actually variable. It changes. So right now, I think when I started this, the interest rate was about 8 8.65%. Maybe an hour goes at 9%. So the interest rate is variable based upon the supply and demand. So it's a very fluid thing. Right now, as of the time of recording this video, if you are to put in, if we were to assume this were to stay static, if you were to put in 1,000 or 100,000 DAI, essentially, if you were to put in 100,000 DAI and this were to stay static, you would make $8,400 of interest over the course of a year. It's the APR, so it's over the course of a year. It's annual, but it is paid out almost on a block by block basis, which is pretty cool. And you can supply that and then withdraw this DAI at any point in time that you'd like. So it's not something where, if you remember, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to sit in the comments, and I even posted something about this on Twitter, and somebody's like, BitConnect 2.0. It's literally not at anything like BitConnect at all. Like nothing like BitConnect. You can withdraw these loans at any point in time, whenever you'd like. And so, I mean, that was one of the biggest telltale signs with BitConnect. Is like, hey, we got your money, we'll lock it. And we're also talking about 8% per year versus 1% per day. That is a very different interest rate. And the thing about this is there's actually people borrowing. There's people on the other side that are borrowing this. It's not some other entity that's saying, hey, supply us with this and we're going to go make money and provide a spread. Somebody else is actually on the other side borrowing money at a given rate, and that is where the supply interest rate comes into the fold. Now, right now, as you can see here, if we pop over to the markets, you can see that there has been $10 million worth of money supplied to Compound Finance's protocol, about 105,000 Ethereum, and people are borrowing about $1.7 million worth of that. And there's an origination fee and also liquidation discount. If you are borrowing, depending upon what happens with your collateral, you can be liquidated you can have your money liquidated. So borrowing is a completely separate ordeal than the supply side of this. As far as what I'm looking at for Compound Finance, my use case is as follows. A lot of you folks know right now with the market where it is, I'm about 40% of my crypto portfolio is sitting in cash. When I say cash, it's in a stable coin, not Tether, but PAX or USDC or GUSD or DAI. And right now, I've had my money sitting in DAI, and it hasn't been doing anything. It hasn't been making any money. It literally hasn't been doing anything. And I'm waiting for the market to somewhat steady. I think we might be in for some more turbulence. I think we might be seeing low 3,000s, potentially mid or high 2,000s in terms of Bitcoin's price. So I'd like to have some of my money in these stable coins. But hey, wouldn't it be nice if I was actually making money off those stable coins, even with the fact that I'd hopefully like to see DAI and PAX and USDC and GUSD chilling at $1. Well, that's where I think Compound Finance is really interesting to me, because I can still keep my essentially investment safe within the confines of a stablecoin, and I can also make some percentage of a return based on the amount and the variable rate of the lending on DAI. So that's exactly how I'm using that right now. Is rather than keeping my money in a stablecoin that's actually doing absolutely nothing, I am supplying that on Compound, and I can withdraw that at any point in time. And why I think this is useful too is because if I want to withdraw this at any point in time, all I have to do is go into here and I can simply withdraw that, and then I'm not earning any interest anymore. I'm not earning that variable interest. But if it's a scenario where it's like, oh my God, something super bullish happened with Ethereum or Bitcoin and I need to get that money out, I can switch it out and I'm really in one block, and boom, I'm good to go. I'm ready to roll. So how do you do this? What is the process right now for this? Well, as of the time of recording this, there is not much of a supply APR to be had with Basic Attention Token. There is no supply APR with Augur. There is no supply APR with 0x, and there's less than 0.5% interest annually on wrapped Ether. So those are not necessarily the most attractive things. But when you're looking at DAI, you're talking about 8.4% interest over a year. And again, this is variable. It literally changes almost minute by minute. You're talking about 8.4% over the year. Maybe this is 5% when you're watching this. Maybe this is 3%. But for me, 2 or 3% sitting in DAI is better than the nothing that I would have had regardless. So hey, why not? So many of you might have DAI, many of you might not. But one of the pretty much the use case and the way I went through the process of getting DAI, if you don't have it, it is an Ethereum based stablecoin that is over collateralized utilizing Maker. So if you're familiar with MakerDAO, DAI is MakerDAO stablecoin. So if we pop over to, I'm going to use AirSwap. It's on a number of different decentralized exchanges. Or DAI is not on like Binance or any of the big ones, but AirSwap, and obviously I work at AirSwap, but AirSwap is, I think, a really easy way to get this. And it's also because Compound Finance uses your MetaMask, AirSwap uses MetaMask as well. So what you would want to do is you'd want to send some Ethereum to your MetaMask, and then pop over here and go to the quick buy and sell. And I'll show you how I did it with I'll show you how I'll do it with $1,000 worth of Ethereum. So I'll click buy and sell. I will authenticate in through MetaMask. So I already did that. If I pop over to DAI and say, hey, let's pop this over here. I want to connect with DAI. And I want to, there we go. I'll sign that transaction. I have 11 ETH, so I want to buy $1,000 worth of DAI. Find the sellers, just click on that. And I can buy 1,000 DAI for 9.86 ETH at this point in time. So I'll just click buy. Boom. Confirm. And then wait a few seconds as far as that goes. So it took me about 30 seconds to turn 9.86 Ethereum or ETH into 1,000, or I think 999 DAI. So right now I have 1,000 DAI, and I'm able to supply this to the Compound protocol to start earning interest on that. I can also borrow with some percentage of that if I'd like, but again, I'm focusing specifically here on the supply side. So if I head over to the app, I'll click on DAI, and this is the area where I already have $5,400 in the balance. But if I click here and I want to supply another, you can see that $1,000 I just bought. I have $1,000 in DAI. So I will supply $1,000 to Compound. I'll click on this, and again, this will come up. This is all done on chain within Ethereum. So I'll click confirm here, and I'll submit the transaction to Compound. And as soon as that goes through, I will now have $6,476 of DAI supplied to the protocol that is earning me that variable interest, that 8.4% interest. And again, I think this is pretty cool as far as the kind of decentralized distributed finance, the hashtag DeFi stuff goes around. I think this is interesting in a couple of respects. There are a number of different pricing fluctuations that happen with this. So with Compound, you will see the interest rates kind of switch fairly substantially. And it's something to keep an eye on, whether you might be able to earn interest in some of these different assets, why you might be able to earn interest in some of these assets. But it's definitely something I would keep a bit of an eye on. As I look at this, I don't want to say it's risk-free or anything like that. So there's a couple things you want to take into consideration. I am lending this money. Now we can see that the transaction went through. So we now have $6,476 in supply. And you can see the interest earned. It's now back to, I guess, 0.02. But we can see the interest earned starting to earn interest within DAI as well. Now, going to the risks. So I think there's, in my mind, two primary risks when it comes down to this. Number one is DAI as a whole. So DAI is a stablecoin. It is not a fiat-backed stablecoin, though. It is an over-collateralized stablecoin. The usage of it and the construct of it is fairly confusing for some people. But for the most part, DAI has held its peg very well to $1, even though it is based off the price of Ethereum. And there is, depending upon the price of Ethereum, there is a somewhat decent chance that DAI could lose its value if Ethereum goes way, way down. So when you are evaluating this, the price of DAI, if these aren't dollars. Yes, I have it represented right now in this UI as dollars, but if we switch it over, it's really an ETH based. It's really ETH based, and you're also keeping money in DAI. So if the price of DAI goes to zero, that money that I put in here is essentially at zero. So that is concern number one. Concern number two is this is not BitConnect. This is not some entity that is doing something crazy with your money behind the scenes that is not transparent or providing crazy levels of return completely without substantiation. But when you are operating on the Ethereum blockchain, there have been situations in the past where if the smart contract is not constructed properly, or there is some type of critical vulnerability in the code, you can be at risk. And that is a possibility here as well. So before you look at this and say, wow, I get 8% on this and all I'm doing is lending a stablecoin, I get 0.01% in my bank, I'm going to put all my money in my bank account on here and make some interest. You have to consider those things as again, the price of DAI. What if it breaks peg, and what if it is not as reliable as it has been in the past really 10 months or so? And then also too, you have to trust Compound Finance from a technical perspective. I trust them from just a general company perspective, but what if there's an unforeseen technical vulnerability that the code might not be perfect or anything like that? So I am really interested to see how this pans out, and I think for me personally, it's a pretty cool experiment in decentralized finance or distributed finance with lending money to a protocol and having other people borrow that to short or whatever they might need with this. And for me, again, this is a really nice opportunity because I do have a good amount of my own money right now in stable coins sitting on the sideline waiting for the price to stabilize or to continue to dip so I could buy in at a lower price. Because I have that money in stable coins, this is a chance to earn increased ROI on top of that money that's sitting in stable coins. And I think that's fairly attractive for me. And then two, it's a really interesting way. There are so many different opportunities to make money in the crypto landscape right now. And there's all these different kind of minute little details that I think people overlook because they just think about trading. And sometimes you don't need to trade. You can lend capital to you could supply capital to a lending protocol. You could do a number of different things. And this is just one of those things. So hopefully this was helpful for you because I know I get the question all the time. How do I make money doing this? How do you make money? What's the revenue stream? What's the ROI? This is something where you can earn 8% APR over the course of a year. And again, this is variable. It could be at 5% by the time you watch this because it's based on supply and demand. And if everybody goes and supplies a ton of DAI, nobody's borrowing that. Obviously, the percentage is going to go down. So hopefully this was helpful for you. If you enjoyed this video, press the thumbs up button. Would love for that. It helps the channel out a ton. If you enjoyed this video and you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for your time. Crypto Bobby signing out. Hope you have a good one. Peace.